Hi, this is the Outsourcing and Offshoring Podcast. I'm Henry Costa, the host of the podcast. Our guest today is Martin Conboy. Martin is an outsourcing expert and he is currently the Director of Front Office Outsourcing and Back Office Outsourcing. He's joining us today to talk about his expertise, which is outsourcing, and we're going to talk about the landscape of the BPO industry right now and the future of work. And yeah, welcome to the show, Martin, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Henry, and good morning.
And good morning to you too. Yeah, so just for our listeners, can you give us a little bit more background about yourself and tell us about what you do?
Sure. Well, look, I believe it would be fair to say that I'd be recognized as one of the leading voices in the global outsourcing industry and its role in facilitating outsourcing success around the Asia Pacific. In fact, in November 2014, I was voted into the top 5 most influential and respected people in the global call center outsourcing industry. And I've developed over the years some expertise in outsourcing, shared services, call centers and what have you. And I've delivered keynote addresses at conferences and so forth in Australia, Bangladesh, China, Hong Kong, India, Korea, Malaysia, Mauritius, Middle East, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and the USA. So, in fact, I had a role in the early days of the Philippines BPO industry in helping it get established, and of course, it ended up being a major player on the world stage. More recently, I was a founding member of the Standards Australia Subcommittee IT 03007, which had a remit to create global standards and best practices for the global ICT BPO industry. And that standard was published in 2017. And just to finalise, I was the former president of the Australian BPO Association, and I'm a director of a number of outsourcing-related companies. You mentioned FUBU, which stands for Front Office Outsourcing, Back Office Outsourcing. Also, I'm currently director of Pacific Accounting and Business Services, an Indian-based outsourced accounting and bookkeeping company that services the US and Australia. And I'm also a director of Financial Property Management, which is a specialist outsourcing and facilitation company with a virtual assistant workforce in the Philippines that services the rental property market in Australia. And finally, I'm associated with a company called VidCruiter, which is a specialist software recruitment company that's a global leader in robotic process automation. So that's my background.
that's a lot. It sounds like a long list, and yeah, it's great to have you on.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure.
Since you just mentioned that you've been in the outsourcing industry for a very long time, can you tell us more about how you came to how you found the Philippines as an outsourcing destination and how it's been like the past decade? How's the evolution been like?
Sure. Well, look, I first started studying the Philippines call center industry when it had less than 25,000 people. And I've seen it develop over the years into the world champion player that it is. And as I understand it, currently it provides work for over 1 million people in the Philippines. What happened was I owned a company that used to conduct market research into the Philippines call center space back in 1997. And the industry in the Philippines has produced some brilliant individuals who have championed the sector. They developed a strong industry association called IT and Business Process Association. They call it IBPAP. And then that, of course, made it easier to attract companies to come to the Philippines to set up their operations. Of course, one of the main attractions in the early days, and still even today, is that the Philippines, not many people know this, but the Philippines is the third largest English-speaking country in the world. I'll leave it to your listeners to try and figure out who's number 1 and 2. This industry association produced lots of relevant research. They facilitated, including the stuff that we were producing. They facilitated introductions to the government for people coming in from other countries and industry officials to ensure, seamless development and progress. So people like me in the early days were around. But once the Filipino industry got its act together and they created their own industry associations such as IBPAT, then, the rest is sort of history. They took care of it from there.
I see. And yeah, so, you mentioned that, you mentioned that, yeah, it was I guess you can say that it's a call center, the call center was big here. When did you go here, or when exactly did you arrive here, and how do you see the BPO industry morphing now in 2018 and moving forward from this?
Yeah, sure. Look, in the early days, there was call centers in Manila Electric and the telephone companies and so forth, and they were just basically servicing their local customers. And it wasn't until the late 90s when the outsourcing industry started to take off, and then companies started to bubble up in the Philippines that service mainly America to start with, and then other countries, and that's where it started from. So I don't think that it's any secret that the industry is in a state of change. So obviously, in the early days and up until recently, it was all around transactional opportunities and so forth. What you would expect call centers to be built for. It could be customer service, it could be customer queries, that type of thing. But these days, machines are doing a lot of that transactional type of work. So, look, the thing is that I don't think it's any secret, as I said, that jobs in the future that currently revolve around humans handling transactions are in decline. This is a universal issue around the world. It costs a fraction of what a human costs to provide a better customer service or experience by letting computers do a lot of that work. The jobs of the future will have very little to do with processing words or numbers. As we mentioned, the internet can do that now. Nor will we need many people, as we do at the moment, to act as call center agents, errand runners, or receptionists. Instead, there's going to be a huge focus on finding the essential people needed in an organization and then outsourcing everything that's not core to an organization's remit. Most of the best jobs will be for people who manage customers, who organize social media fans, and who do digital content management. We will, of course, continue to need brilliant designers, energetic and rigorous lab technicians, where, people actually have to touch things to get a result. But more and more, they will need to actually show up at an office. Sorry, what I meant to say was more and more the need to actually show up at an office that consists of a farm of cubicles is just going to fade away. It's too expensive, and it's too slow, and it's too cumbersome. So 15 years ago, Facebook didn't exist. 10 years before that, we didn't have the web. So who knows what jobs will be born a decade from now. One thing for sure is that it will definitely not look the same as now. So no one's going to pay people just to show up. We will see in the future a more flexible, more freelance, more outsourced, more flat structured and collaborative organizations with a far less secure work world. It'll be run by a generation with new values, and women will increasingly be at the controls.